Welcome to everyone. This is a question and answer session with Kartapurik Khalsa for the upcoming course, Ayurvedic Herbalism, Ancient Remedies for Reducing Inflammation, Improving Mental Clarity, and Aging Vibrantly. So welcome. And I am David Crow. I'm the host of the Plant Medicine Summit and on the faculty at the Shift Network. And I'll be hosting this call with KP and covering the questions that you have sent in. A lot of really good questions have been submitted, and thank you for sending those, and thank you for joining us. So let's welcome KP, and those of you who are on the intro call know that he has a very extensive and very impressive bio. I will just give you some of the high points here. He's president emeritus of the American Herbalist Guild, and he has trained with the Ayurvedic master Yogi Bhajan for 32 years, where he received a very classical education in Ayurvedic medicine, which gives him unique qualifications. He's nationally credentialed to teach herbalism, yoga, and Ayurvedic massage, and is one of the first nationally certified instructors of Kundalini Yoga in the United States. So he brings a wealth of holistic thinking and education to his herbal courses. He's a professor at Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and a founding faculty in the Ayurvedic Sciences program at Bastyr University and a faculty member in the Botanical Medicine Department at the National College of Natural Medicine, where he trains naturopathic medical students and teaches Ayurveda. In addition to these impressive professional credentials, he's also written or edited 30 books, including major works on Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, and physiology. So quite a synthesis of the classical Asian medical systems. And he was also the senior research scientist and chief medical formulator for 30 years at the Yogi Tea Company, an Ayurvedic medicinal tea company. So with that very quick review of these extensive credentials, KP, welcome.
Hi, David. So nice to be back with you again.
Well, we had such a great intro call. It was definitely important to continue our conversation. I enjoyed it very much. And since then, many questions have come in. Well over 100 questions have been submitted on the website, which of course we will not have time to cover all of these, but I just want to thank those of you on this call again for sending in your very important questions. And there will be a lot of questions here that KP will be addressing that will address many other closely related questions. This always happens with these sessions, that there will be many questions about fibromyalgia. There will be many questions about various health conditions. And so by picking out one of these questions, it will answer it for many people. So if you don't get your specific question answered, don't worry about it. You will probably hear it referred to indirectly. So this question and answer is specifically so that we can explore these topics that are going to be featured in KP's upcoming course, Ayurvedic Herbalism. And this course begins next Wednesday, June 6th. And if you would like to take a look at the page that has all the details, you will find it at ayurvedicherbalism.com, just like it sounds, ayurvedicherbalism.com, and you can see the full description of the course there. So let's go ahead and get started. And if you are having any questions with being on this webcast, if you're having any difficulty with the tech side of things, you can always just contact the Shift Network customer support right away at support.shiftnetwork.com. So with that, KP, let's go ahead and scroll through these numerous questions, very good questions, which I'm sure you're going to be giving in-depth answers to. Let's go ahead and start with a classic question about classic Ayurveda. How do you decide the prakruti of a person? In other words, a person wants to know, how do we decide their constitution? They're using the classic Ayurvedic term here. How do you decide the constitution of the person, or the body type of the person? That's what this term means. And this, of course, is a very common question that everybody would like to know, their constitution and their body type. So let's hear it from you. How do you decide?
Sure. Well, first, let's distinguish between the body type, in other words, the blueprint or the basic structure, function, genetic, the underlying metabolism, the way the body is constructed, that's the constitution, and the current balance of energies in the body. Those are the two things we're most concerned about. And in America, we like to sort of categorize things by some kind of system, So Ayurveda, we have 7 different categories that will reflect a person's body type. And that's the most basic information that you need in Ayurveda to manage your entire health over a lifetime. The most important thing that you could know for the next 50, 70, 90 years, probably one of the top 5 things I've ever learned in natural medicine. But what we actually treat is what's going on with you now. So let's say that you have a cold, wet body like I have, one of the 7 types. I could develop warm diseases or dry diseases or any other different kind of disease today, and we would treat that. So we treat what we find today, and we let the Constitution guide us so that we don't push things off too far. We don't want to create long-term problems while we handle the short-term problems. The answer to the question about how we decide the constitution of a person, the body type, the physical, mental leanings or characteristics or lifetime tendencies of a person, is usually by doing some kind of a questionnaire, and those are easily available on the internet. Just Google it and you'll get to 50 of them, and just take a few of them because they're all worded slightly differently. They all give various weight to different kinds of questions, but if you take 5 of them, you'll get the general sense of what's going on with you. What we want to know is your basic physiology that you were born with, hot or cold, heavy or light, wet or dry, and that will determine, in all likelihood, the kinds of disease tendencies that you're going to have, the kind of diet that would be good to eat over a lifetime. But remember, we don't treat that today necessarily because things may have changed. You could be a person with a very thin skeleton who, over the past 5 years, has gained an extra 50 pounds. Right now, the challenge is dealing with that 50 pounds. Underneath that 50 pounds is the thin skeleton that we want to get to. And once we burrow down to the bottom line issues, then we can help people sustain that over time. So we have the questionnaires in today's world. Traditionally, we would touch a person, we would ask a person what's going on with their body by just discussing, and how things were in the past. We might talk to their parents about how someone was when they were a child and get a sense of the core energetics of their body. Are they fundamentally wet, for example? And then we would want to dry them out or make sure that they stayed dry, or eat a diet that made sure that they stayed dry. So we observe them with all our senses, we touch them, and we ask them questions. Those are the classic 3 things. And then as we proceed, we observe the kinds of changes that we get, and that gives us more and more information, and we get more and more sure about it. Every beginning book on Ayurveda talks about the Constitution, and it's been overly discussed, frankly. When I was studying with my teacher, I heard him mention Constitution maybe 5 times in the 30 years that I studied with him. It's important for the long run, but most people have more serious temporary problems because they've done things that were not consistent with their constitution and created issues. Their body began to retain water, or it began to manifest inflammation, or whatever it was. So just a reminder that we treat what we find today, working backward toward the constitution, and then we help people sustain that. If anybody, the scriptures tell us you're supposed to be born with good health, all your energies of your body in balance, and then we sustain that by eating the diet and lifestyle and such that's appropriate for that constitution. But few people are in that situation now. All right. Anyway, that's how we do it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for putting that into perspective also, because I know that people are really interested in knowing their body type, their constitution. And I know that it also becomes quite complicated, really, when people start taking these tests and getting a lot of different answers, and especially when it gets into trying to figure out their diet, and especially when they then discover that they actually have mixed constitutions, and then putting together their mixed constitutions with the mixed up information on the internet about the mixed constitutional diets, and people get really quite confused. And so I think that your perspective on it is very reasonable, a very good way to approach it. So thank you. And along these lines, here's a big topic, which I'm sure you have a lot to say about. You could teach a whole course on just this one question. What are the best Ayurvedic herbs for digestion?
Right. That's a little bit like saying, what's your favorite ride at Disneyland? There are so many possibilities and so many different types of digestive tracts that really there is no best. Fundamentally, let's talk about a digestive tract that's cold, underfunctioning, undersecreting. That's what happens to most people in our culture as they age. They eat a diet that doesn't promote good digestion, and as they age, their digestive tract becomes less and less able to secrete those hot juices that digest the food. So for most people, Ayurveda would recommend mildly warming tropical spices, cloves, cinnamon, ginger, that sort of thing. Black pepper is used. Many of them. India is by and large a tropical country, and so these mildly warming, essential oil-containing tropical spices are easily available. Occasionally, you find someone with an extra hot digestive tract, and those are people that might have gastritis, heartburn, that kind of thing. And then we can use cooling digestive aids like spearmint or coriander, things that at least enhance digestion without over-enhancing the heat of their tummy and making their tummy too hot. Well, that gives us a start anyway.
Okay, that's a very succinct answer. Thank you. Hot and cold types of herbs for hot and cold types of conditions. So if you just joined us, I'm talking with KP Khalsa about his new course, Ayurvedic Herbalism. And if you'd like to see the entire description of the course, it is at ayurvedicherbalism.com. So let's continue with more good questions here. Here's a big subject again. People always ask these very succinct questions about these huge topics. What is the best herb for Alzheimer's?
We don't really know very well yet what the future is for Alzheimer's. One of my friends who works in an integrative capacity with Alzheimer's says that within the next 10 years, we will have conquered it. Conventional medicine is making great strides. Alternative medicine is making great strides. He's in the research side, so he's 4 or 5 years ahead, and they're having great results in the lab. The main natural medicine that's on everybody's mind for Alzheimer's is turmeric, and more specifically curcumin, or the main anti-inflammatory active ingredient in turmeric that is one of the most studied substances ever in human history. That looks pretty good. We don't have a lot of information about how these things are going to work in humans from the scientific point of view yet, because we're still sort of working up to that. But the preliminary studies look very, very good for curcumin. India has a rate of dementia that's one-eighth that of America. And in terms of Alzheimer's disease specifically, India ranks number 108 in the world in terms of countries with Alzheimer's, and most of the countries below that, it's just because we can't get good data. The United States is in the top 5. We're around number 3. The others in the top handful are all northerly, Western Europe, industrialized countries, Nordic countries, Iceland, Germany, Sweden, places like that. And they have lifestyles pretty similar to the United States. They have, a similar ethnic makeup, a similar socioeconomic situation. And India is about as different as you could imagine. So scientists noticed this, and they looked at India and said, well, what do people do in India that's different? And I guess my answer to that would be, well, everything. The climate is different, the ethnicity is different, the diet, just the lifestyle. Until quite recently, almost everybody in India was rural. But the scientists said, don't they eat that curry stuff there? Yeah, it's got that yellow stuff in it, turmeric. Maybe it could be that. So they studied that. And at least that was one of the factors. There are probably many other factors involved, but they discovered that in the typical kind of reductionist scientific way, that curcumin was the magic bullet, and it turned out to work pretty well. So the average Indian person eats 1 to 2 grams of turmeric every single day from childhood through elderhood. Now we're beginning to look at other things like the consumption of the warming tropical spices we talked about. These spices, not only do they do things like enhance your digestion, promote circulation, but they have a whole bunch of other phytochemicals that turn out to be beneficial for many other things. India is the largest per capita consumer of spices, culinary spices in the world. People in India eat more spices in their food for culinary and medicinal purposes than anybody else in the world. So now the research is expanding from curcumin to those other kinds of things like clove, cinnamon, ginger, and we're seeing some benefit with those as well. So I guess I would say that if I wanted to pick one herb that we know about now that's likely to be the best choice, it would be curcumin. But another one of my favorite herbs is the herb gotu-kola, and that herb has plenty of science in terms of enhancing cognition, intelligence, memory, brain function in general. It really delivers as advertised. I use it a lot for all kinds of brain issues, cognition, dementia. It's widely used in Ayurveda for dementia. It tastes pretty decent. It's a kind of a mild salad vegetable, a little flimsy herb like spinach that you can use as food or in tea. You get the dose up and people notice a real big difference. So those are two big ones. And then going back to the digestive question, Ayurveda is so focused on digestion because phytochemical is going to get into your bloodstream unless you digest it. So the first most basic step in every Ayurvedic perspective is pumping up your digestion. So enhancing your digestion to make sure you don't have undigested food going further down into your digestive tract and out of your body, and you get those important circulation enhancing, brain boosting chemicals in your body. They're all going to be to the good in terms of Alzheimer's. So at least we could start there.
Excellent. And it is indeed very interesting that a lot of research is now finding that the aromatic plants that contain the essential oils have very high concentrations of antioxidants that also are neuroprotective. One just comes to mind right away. Rosemary tea, for example, it has a long history of being used for memory as well. But it's very interesting that turmeric is in that category, and that is number one. And good answer. Thank you. Comprehensive. Okay, here's another question that will require a little bit of translating some Ayurvedic terms. As a Vata woman in the Vata phase of life, I wish to eat a salad every day, but Ayurveda discourages raw food. My salad is filled with lots of vibrant colors and well-cooked legumes and is different daily. My digestive fire is strong with good appetite and good bowel movements 3 times a day. I understand that I am what I digest. Please explain the underlying principles. So a little opportunity to translate some terms and to talk about some of the cultural differences in our diets also.
Yeah, that's for sure. So the word that was used by the questioner, vata, is the cold, dry metabolic force in Ayurveda. Ayurveda is an overtly energetic medical system. We use these energetic terms and talk about energetic ideas. So things like temperature, moisture, and weight are more important to us than the name of a particular disease. Ayurveda does name diseases, but only for convenience. So if we had 10 people with fibromyalgia lined up against the wall, they would all be treated somewhat differently because they're different age, different gender, different stage of the disease, and that term, covers a lot of territory. So we have code word systems to describe these combinations of these energetics. So vata means cold and dry. So when you're born, you have this tendency for your body to be a certain way and to sort of retain that energetic balance throughout your life. So what she's referring to as being a Vata person means that she has a body that's unstable. The metabolism tends to waver a little bit, go up and down. Vata people have good energy one day, they're tired the next. They have good sleep one night, and not the next. Their digestion is strong one day, not the next. But generally speaking, tend to have unstable and weak digestion. Let me just clarify something about food. Discourages isn't exactly the right word. That's the word that she used. Raw food is perfectly fine in Ayurveda. It's just a question of who's eating it. So this is a Vata woman who has, by nature, her blueprint, a cold and dry physiology, and she's in what she says is the Vata phase of life, which is the last third. So everybody, as they go through life, go through these energy cycles, and in the last third of life, maybe age 60 and beyond, everyone's body tends to become a little cooler and a little drier, and you've noticed that from all the elderly people that you've seen. Now, for some people, that's a good change. People who are hot and wet in the middle of their life dry out and cool down a little bit, and that helps them head toward balance. But people like her who are cold and dry just get colder and drier then, and that tends to suppress the digestive fire. Raw food is a little bit more difficult to digest. It hasn't been pre-digested by cooking, so your digestive tract has to do a little extra work. Plus, it's cold energetically, which is not good for a cold person. Let's just clarify here that Ayurveda is all about doing what works. The very first chapter of our most basic and oldest text, the author says basically, don't believe me because I wrote this in a book. I may be an expert, but Ayurveda is not about obeying things because they occur in some musty old book. It's about doing things that work. So you're free to experiment. In fact, in Ayurvedic aesthetics, it's said that the last page of every Ayurvedic text has been left blank for doctors of the future to write the future of Ayurveda. So it's constantly evolving. New understandings are developing, and we're adding new ideas as we modernize these sorts of things. So we want to do things that work. So if you find that you can eat a salad every day and you feel great and things are going well and the digestive tract is good and you measure the time it takes to go through and it's the proper time and all the food is digested, then fantastic. It's working very well. But for most people with a cold, unstable metabolism, salad is not the best choice. So one way around that would be to use some more cooked vegetables. Everything is a trade-off, always, with these things. So cooking vegetables reduces their nutrient content to a certain extent. Some of the nutrients are destroyed. We know that. But it also pre-digests them a little bit so that more of the nutrients that are there are likely to make it into your bloodstream. So it's a trade-off, and you just have to experiment with what is working well. Now, this particular woman says her digestive fire is strong. She doesn't say how she knows that, but that's good news. So if you have a strong digestive fire and you can digest cold, raw salad vegetables, then they're full of nutrients and, fantastic. So ultimately, we do what works best. This cold, dry energy we have to be careful of because as a person ages, now she's in the last 1/3 of her life, which means that she's just going to continue to get colder and drier as she ages. We can't change that. That's just the way human physiology is, but we can compensate for that. So we'd like her to eat more and more mild, warming digestive spices. We want her to not have gas because that tends to exaggerate these problems. We want her to be able to digest her food properly and then not begin to show any of the signs of these pathologies that go along with cold and dry, which are things like anxiety, insomnia, and chronic pain. Things that don't kill you, but really make your elderhood miserable. So we want to support those ideas and have her stay healthy for the rest of her life. Generally speaking, we would assume that salads are going to be a bit of a problem. One simple thing to do is eat the salad at room temperature rather than pulled out of the refrigerator. So that would reduce some of the cold and allow it to be more well digested. So good luck to the questioner. Sounds like you're doing some good things. And if it's all working, then let's not upset it.
Great. Good answer. That comes a lot from people who are vegetarians concerning whether they need to eat meat or not, that they don't want to, and how to get around that. We have lots of discussions with people who are vegan. We have many discussions along these lines in clinical practice of translating these Ayurvedic concepts. And just one final point that I'll add to your excellent answer, is that many of these things are also based on cultural habits and also hygienic conditions that we find this recommendation to avoid raw in Chinese medicine as well. And one of the underlying reasons for that is because eating raw food in some parts of the world is not that hygienic. And that's not an issue that we have to worry about here in the West. So,
Right.
good answer. Thank you, KP. Here's another one of those questions that gives you a lot of room to teach a lot of Ayurveda to us. What is the best diet and herbal remedy for the Pitta dosha? Two more words to translate.
Sure. Well, these primal metabolic forces that we talked about earlier, we mentioned Vata, that's one of them. One of the other ones is Pitta. And Pitta is a hot, wet energy, what we would characterize as inflammation. So it's the inflammatory tendency. It's metabolism, it's fire, it's transformation, it's electrical energy, hot digestive secretions in our body. The Vata that we were talking about earlier with the woman with the salad is cold and dry, as I said, but that's associated with the nervous system. And Pitta is associated again with this heat and metabolism. So each one of these three primal metabolic forces is called a dosha. The word dosha actually means rotten or corrupt or something that could go bad. And in that sense, Ayurveda has sort of a negative perspective on the human condition. You know, Tibetan physicians call the body a walking disease waiting to happen. And that's really a very good description because in many ways we live in a hostile world. David, you were just mentioning about hidden pathogens in raw food, and people figured that out and started cooking their food so that they would have less food poisoning. So the body is inherently unstable, and we would like to keep it as healthy as possible. And when you're doing well, when you have robust physiology and your body is well balanced, then you're unlikely to get disease, and we want to keep you there. But things begin to happen. And so when you have a physical from an Ayurvedic practitioner, there's never any such thing as a clean bill of health, and you're just good, go ahead. They're always looking at the perfected human and then looking for discrepancies from that. So there's always something to work on. Even if you came in with the perfect body, which nobody ever has, then you could start to work on your mind. There's always something to do to grow and evolve as a person and to enhance your health, increase your immune function, your stamina, your brain power, your sexuality, all those things. And we're looking at these doshas as a way to understand that. So the dosha that means, rotten or something that can go out of balance is a way to describe how these things, physiological forces, go off track. So Pitta dosha is the only hot example of these three, and things that create problems for it are things that make you overheated. So hot, spicy food, hot environments, wearing too much clothing so that you're hot, hot emotions, all those things pump up the heat in the body and lead toward hot or inflammatory kinds of things. So just like with Vata, where we wanted to focus on things that were nutritive and moisturizing, with Pitta, we want to focus on things that are cool. So cool diet would be things like cucumbers, celery, green vegetables, food with bitter taste. The number one remedy in all of Ayurveda for inflammation for Pitta is ghee, clarified butter made from cow's butter. And that's considered to be just a nectar food in Ayurveda, and it's used extensively, but mainly the aim is at Pitta dosha to control inflammation. Those healthy fats allow the body then to make anti-inflammatory chemicals like that are made out of fats, like cortisol and anti-inflammatory prostaglandins. So bottom line, green vegetables and ghee for Pitta.
Okay, thank you. Nice and simple. And so for those of you who have joined us, this is a question and answer session with KP Khalsa talking about his upcoming course, Ayurvedic Herbalism. And if you would like to follow along and check out the course page where you can see all the details, it is at ayurvedicherbalism.com. Very simple. Here's another in a long list of excellent questions here. And what's also nice going through these questions is it's clear that people have a lot of background already in Ayurveda. It's nice to see that so many people are actually using these Ayurvedic terms. They know their
Yeah.
dosha, they understand some of these principles. They're asking about specific herbs related to specific conditions in Ayurvedic language. This certainly could not have happened 10 years ago. And so we can see then that Ayurveda is becoming integrated into our culture, the basic language. I think at this point that there are large numbers of people who understand Vata, Pitta, Kapha at a fundamental level. And I'm sure that you are one of the people that have promoted this awareness in our culture. So thank you. Here's another excellent question about an herb you have already mentioned, so you can give us a few more details. How do we use Gotu Kola as a memory booster?
Yeah. Well, before we get on to Gotu Kola, thank you. And I sure hope so, because I've been doing this for 47 years, and it seemed like a long grind, but Ayurveda has become one of those overnight, 50-year overnight sensations. And so it's great that it's finally flowering. And I think we are there, and people do have this, this understanding. The babysitter of one of my daughter's friends the other day just happened to be over at my house, and we were talking, and she said, yeah, I was getting so aggravated in this conversation. My pitta was really rising. And it was just like a normal part of conversation that she would say that, and she learned it from my daughter, but I mean, it's become part of her normal, uh, pattern of speech. So it's definitely working its way into our culture. Gotu Kola, again, one of my favorite herbs. I mentioned this earlier in terms of Alzheimer's, but one of the most well-researched herbs in the world in terms of brain uh, treatments, memory boosting, enhancing every aspect of the brain. Gotu Kola helps to treat the actual physical tissue of the brain. So it's used for things like crushing injuries to the brain, and then not to the brain, to the nerves, crushing injuries to the nerves, and then memory and cognition and things like that. The thing about Gotu Kola to remember is that the dose is often the dose that's often used is way too low. Gotu Kola is I often see people use half a gram in a capsule. They take one day. They didn't have any improvement in memory, and they gave up. It didn't work. The dose is much much higher. So I usually use it as tea. It doesn't taste too bad, kind of like spinach or lawn grass. Most people find it to be pretty reasonable. The typical dose of chopped dried herb would be about a heaped handful, maybe the size of a softball, something like that, of chopped dry herb, and you're going to cook that into tea and drink all that tea. It's hard for people to just process that that's even possible, because they're used to tea in a tea bag. That's 2 grams in a tea bag. We're talking about 15 times that as kind of a starting dose. For people with serious memory problems, we often go double or even triple that. It's a very mild herb. Imagine if you were making tea out of spinach as a medicine. It's mild, how much you'd have to use. So you want to use a high enough dose. 30 grams would be a pretty typical standard kind of dose. Again, that's about the size of a softball of chopped dried herb. You want to soak it, steep it in water that's just been boiled. You don't have to boil the water for at least an hour, and then you want to strain it out very completely. You could use a French press or just squeeze it with your hands, but you want to squeeze all the last water out of the dregs, because that's a lot of dregs. Then that would be your daily dose, and you would drink that for an extended period of time. Certainly, it could be the rest of your life if you prefer. It has a lot of great benefits in many ways. Begin to notice memory changes for most people in about a month. Some people come back in a couple weeks and say, you know what? I didn't forget my car keys at all today. So somewhere in that general neighborhood. And then most people find that they get ongoing memory improvement over many months and even years. Usually after about a year or so, we've gotten as much as we can out of it, and we gradually transition the dose down to more like just a beverage cup of tea every day. My favorite herb for the nervous system, my specialty is neurology, and I treat a lot of MS, and it's just the secret weapon for MS. But on the whole, just a stupendous memory remedy. And remember that we want to use enough. That's the key.
Excellent. Thank you. So here is a question and a comment that you might want to touch on also. Do you have a book that has meal plans in it to eat healthy? That's the question. The comment is, my immune system is shot.
Right. I think that's going to dovetail with some other information that we may get into a little bit later here about the immune system, but I can comment on both. Well, if you're interested in my most recent book, it's called The Way of Ayurvedic Herbs, and it's not a book about Ayurvedic dietetics, but it does have some food information, many recipes, and it would be a good place to start. It also has questionnaires about those things we were talking about earlier, so if you want to grab that, you could. It is a book about Ayurvedic herbalism. In fact, those of you that are going to take the course, we will provide all the material that you need, many slide sets and much other supportive information. But if you're interested in following along with that book, that would be a great book to order so that when we start the course later, you'll have that. Nonetheless, it's basically a primer on getting started with Ayurvedic medicine. The other two that I would recommend are both by the author Amadea Morningstar. And she wrote a book initially called The Ayurvedic Cookbook, which is very good. It's Indian influenced. And so if you like Indian food, of course, Ayurveda came out of India. So most of the cultural perspectives on what kinds of foods to use came out of India. But over the last 50 years, we've been westernizing these ideas. And that's been my goal for the last almost 50 years I've been doing this, is to make these things palatable to the Western mind, to the American mind. And so Morningstar came out with a book not long ago called Ayurvedic Cooking for Westerners to meet that need, which is excellent. So those are both good choices. These have been out for a while. You could probably pick up a used copy on Amazon for next to nothing. I would recommend those. Speaking of making Ayurveda palatable to the Western mind, that was our whole motivation for doing this course. And David and I have talked about it, the Shift Network, and I have talked about it, and they wanted to sort of erase the misconceptions around Ayurveda, that it's esoteric, mystical. I'm going to come in on a flying carpet. I look like I should come in on a flying carpet, but you can tell that it's very grounded, balanced, very learnable. Ayurveda is extremely systematic. Even after the first lesson of the course, you will take things away and be able to understand these concepts and apply them your life. People are always shocked at how much they can learn in one course or a day or a weekend. And I always tell them, you're going to be junior Ayurvedist by the end of this weekend, and they can't believe it because they've gotten the sense that somehow you have to be super spiritual to practice it, or it's all based on some kind of intuition or something like that. But in fact, it's extremely systematic, very grounded. You learn some basic principles, and then you start to apply those principles to other things. So we've already taken a bite out of some of those ideas, whether your body is cold or hot, whether your food is cold or hot, how to prepare medicine properly, that sort of thing. Ayurveda itself does not talk about the immune system as a system. The way we think of the immune system today, we talk about the immune system, but it's really more of a concept than a system. It's the mechanisms in your body that separate you from what's not you and keep things that are not you out. Things that shouldn't be in there, get them out. And there are a whole bunch of organs that participate in that. Every cell is part of the immune system. So the bottom line in Ayurveda is to balance those energies that we talked about, temperature, moisture, and weight, the three doshas that David mentioned, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and then enhance the strength of your body, which is done with more long-term, slow-acting, food-like stamina remedies that help you stay strong and hardy over the course of your life. And not only do those keep you from getting sick, but they give you sexual power, restoring your libido, your erectile functioning, brain power we just talked about, longevity, avoiding these sort of subacute chronic diseases that people have, insomnia, anxiety, constipation, gastritis, achy joints, memory slipping, all those things. And they're all handled by managing your diet, managing your lifestyle. In this course, we're going to be talking about herbs, but it's all part of the same idea. And all those things dovetail into the same basic Ayurvedic theory and strategy. So when you start to learn about some of these things for herbs, it gives you clues to how to handle food and when to go to bed and how to act and how to breathe and you do all those things, even somewhat reasonably, you end up living longer, living healthier. We want to add years to your life, yes, but we don't want you to spend the last 10 years of your life in misery. We want you to be vital and healthy. So the immune system is all a part of that. There is no specific herb that sort of pumps up your immune system by itself, but by using these food-like tonic herbs, you retain your health and stay there.
Excellent. And that's a good introduction to the next question, actually, about that category of herbs that you were just referring to. This is about the adaptogenic herbs. And the question is, what adaptogenic herbs would be best for menopause and hormone-related hair loss in women? So some further terms here, starting with adaptogenic, and this gives you another opportunity to talk about another huge subject that I'm sure a lot of people have this type of question that they have submitted.
Sure. Yeah, well, the adaptogenic is a word that sounds more scientific than the word tonic, but these are herbs that help you adapt to stress. That's where the word came from. And this was a word that was coined by a Russian scientist 70 years ago, but we've been using it more and more lately for stamina-enhancing, long-term, stabilizing food-like remedies. Probably the most famous herb in the world in this category is ginseng, which is not an Ayurvedic herb, but it gives you the idea. There's a very specific scientific meaning for adaptogens, and this category is sort of subject to mission creep. You know, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and more herbs are being called adaptogenic that are really not. But they balance your system, whether or not you're in any direction. So you might have high blood pressure or low pressure. You can take an adaptogenic herb. It'll have to help to balance that. Too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry. All these things, they help to bring you back to the middle. So these tonifying herbs, the term we use in Ayurveda is rasayana, which means the path of juice, to make your body juicy, young and juicy again. And when you think about it, the difference between you and your great-grandmother is that you're juicy and she's no longer juicy. So putting your feet on the path of juice, bringing yourself to back to the place of being juicy, we use these rasayana herbs. Well, to answer your question, let's talk about two of them. And there's no doubt what the answer needs to be for the first one for women. That's the herb shatavari. The word itself means 100 husbands, which is a nod to the sexual properties of shatavari. So it enhances libido, sexual performance, sexual lubrication, the whole sexual system. So it's a classic rejuvenative herb in Ayurveda. It's more specifically for women. There's no gender-specific herbs in Ayurveda, so we use shatavari for men. It has an affinity for the pelvis, meaning that we can use it not only for uterine and ovary issues, but also for things like the bladder. And so men have bladders too, so we use it for bladder infection in men, for example. But it's very rejuvenating for the female body. So shatavari, it's typical in India that teenage girls at about age 12, 14 start taking shatavari just a couple grams every day and take it every day for the next 80 years. And that's to avoid the problems with menopause and these hormonal balances. So this concept of starting early and sustaining your health over time is core in Ayurveda. The other herb that goes along with that is ashwagandha, which the name is like a horse. Again, you get the idea. So this is an herb that's mainly for men. And again, men start to take it at puberty and take it every day. But ashwagandha is not limited to men. It can be taken by women. A really common strategy is to use these two herbs together, shatavari and ashwagandha, in a 50-50 mixture. And they're very food-like. Shatavari is the root of an asparagus plant, type of asparagus, and ashwagandha is the root of a type of tomato plant. So very food-like, and you can take large amounts. You can take many tablespoons of that combination if you chose to. So start with a little bit, work your way up gradually, see how it goes. When you get to your optimum benefit, as long as there's no side effect, then continue at that amount for many, many months. And then as things begin to improve, you can bring the dose down to more of a maintenance dose, which might be just a few grams per day. Both of them taste pretty decent. They're both easily available as powder. You can stir them into a bite of mushy food like some oatmeal or something and swallow it. These are some of the most successful herbs that actually really delivering in Ayurveda. They're complementary because Shatavari is a little moistening to the body and a little cooling. Ashwagandha is a little drying and a little warming. So the two together give a neutral combination that just about anybody can take. It's not specific to hair loss, but a broad spectrum general hormone balance, which is what the questioner was looking for. You do that for 5 years, you won't believe the body that you have.
Nice, thank you. Several questions have come about Shatavari, and since there is so much awareness now developing about the benefits of this herb and some of the potential adverse reactions that people are concerned with, even though it's quite a safe herb, let's go ahead and put together here a few of these questions so you can just continue on with this discussion. Is Shatavari a good choice to promote healthy function for women who are trying to get pregnant or who have had difficulty getting pregnant? That's question one. Question two, how about women preparing for in vitro fertilization? And another question, thank you so much for the fantastic information on these herbs. I would like to know, I'm interested in taking Shatavari, but I am not even near menopause. I have severe PMS and hormonal imbalance. Will this help?
Well, the answer to those three questions is yes, yes, and yes. And those are classic uses for Shatavari, the 100 husbands herb. IVF, of course, is very new. So as far as we know, yes, that would be an appropriate thing to do. There should be no problem with taking that. I assume that it would enhance fertility in general. It is one of the herbs that women use to prepare for pregnancy. There's some debate with all these herbs about whether they should be taken during pregnancy. Ayurveda would say to take Shatavari during pregnancy because in very modest amounts, not these multi-tablespoon amounts, but a couple grams a day to assure a healthy pregnancy. Now, that may or may not be in agreement with modern scientific understanding, so you'll have to make up your own mind about that. Same with ashwagandha, but Shatavari does increase fertility. I would assume it would increase healthy IVF. And in the case of the PMS, the Shatavari is beneficial, but there are several types of PMS, and some women don't benefit from Shatavari with PMS. It's worth a try. I'll suggest two others that are more likely to work for two of these conditions. The herb for PMS in Ayurveda is Ashoka, 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 which is just the generic go-to remedy for PMS. It's just it's a grandma remedy known throughout India. It's a tree about the size of a cherry tree. It's a legume related to other beans, like green beans. And we use the bark in that case, and the Ashoka bark is ground into powder, and you take that. Typical dose would be about 5 grams a day, and you should probably take that. You should start about a week before the premenstrual time and take it throughout the premenstrual time. That would be a problem. Very often it just erases at the first try. So that's a good try. Very much the targeted herb for PMS in Ayurveda. The other one I wanted to mention when fertility came up was aloe. We're talking about the gel here. That's my go-to remedy. I've had 35 babies born to my practice from infertile couples. And by the time they come to me, they've had every test they could have, you could imagine. So it's not like I'm going to find anything else that's wrong with them that the university hospital didn't find. But I proceed using these energetic kinds of ideas that we've talked about and just help the woman to become as healthy as she can, to have the healthiest possible reproductive tract. And often, it just happens. Baby number 35 was just born recently, and that woman got pregnant the first cycle after we started aloe. After it's about 5 years of infertility in the first cycle. So aloe is the go-to fertility remedy. We don't really know why. It's not predictable by the energetics. It's just a special property of the aloe. It's the gel. And we use large amounts. So that woman was drinking a pint a day of aloe gel, not the leaf, but the gel. And that did the job. So somewhere above 4 ounces a day would be a typical fertility enhancing remedy, but I've seen it work so many times and it's just classic in Ayurveda. The name for Aloe in Sanskrit is Kumari, which means virgin or maiden. The idea is to bring women back to the state of fertility and healthy reproduction that they had when they were teenagers. And boy, it really lives up to its reputation. So for the questions about fertility, that would be worth a try as well, and even more specific to fertility than the Shatavari.
Excellent. And congratulations on the extended family.
There you go.
So we are talking with KP Khalsa, question and answer session about his upcoming course, Ayurvedic Herbalism. And as you can tell here, so many questions, so many excellent answers and extended answers. And we have time for a few more. Unfortunately, there are so many we could go literally for days, but that's the whole purpose of the course instead. And as you can tell, this is going to be a very incredible course because of KP's knowledge and his background and experience and integrating classical Ayurveda into our modern society. So I just want to mention a few details about the course here, which you can see on that page that I've mentioned several times, Ayurvedic Herbalism. It's a 7-week course, and it happens on Wednesdays at noon Pacific time, starting June 6th. And don't worry about the time, because you can join the class anytime. You won't miss anything, because you are going to receive both the video and the audio versions of the class that you can download anytime during the day later, or during the week later, or even during the year later. And you're also going to receive numerous handouts. As KP mentioned, there are slideshows, there are numerous PDF files, and so forth. I'll mention here also that there is a no-risk money-back guarantee on the course. You have until June 20th, 2 weeks, to make sure that you are really enjoying it. And one of the other benefits here, everyone is invited to join a private Facebook community so that students can discuss questions and answers and experiences with each other. This is a valuable ongoing educational resource. Then, in addition to the course, there are also a number of bonus packages, and I went through this in our intro call. I'll just review these. Everybody who registers for the course receives KP's Ayurvedic Herbalism bonus collection, and that is 3 sets of webinars from KP titled The Essentials of Ayurvedic Herbs, and also a audio dialogue titled Fibromyalgia, the causes, symptoms, and remedies. And this is a discussion that KP and I had at one of the Shift Plant Medicine telesummits, full of a lot of very good information about fibromyalgia. I'll mention the payment plan here, quite simple. You can do one payment of $297, or you can do that in 3 payments of $109. And then finally, we have a last bonus here. If you are on this call and you are signing up today by midnight, you're also going to receive another audio discussion that KP and I did in another one of the plant medicine summits. And this one is on dementia, healthy aging, and a healthy mind. And KP has touched on that in this question and answer session, talking about turmeric. And he will be covering that again in quite a bit more detail in that audio. So let's go ahead and take a couple more questions before we wrap this up, because there are so many good questions, as I've said. And KP, you are a wealth of knowledge and information and experience that we would like to take advantage of, since you are here and sharing all of this extensive knowledge, encyclopedic knowledge about Ayurveda with us. So let's look over some of these questions here that might be relevant to more than just one person. How to treat lower back pain?
Yeah, from the Ayurvedic point of view, pain always involves vata. So that's the nervous system energy. We talked about that a little bit earlier. So we want to do vata controlling kinds of things. The main treatment in Ayurveda for vata is oil. Oil inside, oil outside. We would put oil in every orifice, oil in your eye, up your nose, in your ear, gargle with it, use it as an enema, massage, all those things in your cooking. So oil in general is good in every possible way, just as a starter for that kind of thing. In particular, one of the star remedies in Ayurveda is castor oil. And of course, you've heard of that used as a laxative internally. And we use that a little bit. But the main use in Ayurveda for castor oil is external, believe it or not. It's a thick, sticky, but slippery oil that, especially when you warm it up, penetrates the body very, very well and has healing properties. And so you could apply warm castor oil to your low back as a massage. Internally, ginger is one of the best treatments across the board for this whole situation because it promotes circulation to all those kinds of areas, and it's very good for digestion and all those vata things that we talked about later. So those are a couple things you could try. If it's an inflammatory situation, turmeric, which we talked about before, is likely to work pretty well. Some of you know me. I recognize some of your names from the questions, and we've been together in other courses, other places, and you know that I'm a nut for turmeric. So I've been the main turmeric missionary in America for the last 45 years. But turmeric internally just does so many great things. My teacher called it the internal doctor. Detoxifying, anti-inflammatory, helps to rebuild bone and joint tissue, so many things. And the dose of turmeric can be quite high, as can ginger. So start out with a little bit, let's say a teaspoon of turmeric, teaspoon of ginger, maybe even half with a meal, see how that goes, and increase in half teaspoon increments with your food. And you can work up to multi-tablespoon doses of turmeric and ginger. They take 2, 3, 4 days to really kind of kick in and start to saturate the tissue. But that combination of turmeric and ginger internally and castor oil externally is just dramatic for low back pain.
Nice, thank you. Let's squeeze in one last question here, a very common question about a very common problem. So I'm sure that many people will be interested in your answer on this. How to treat acid reflux?
Yeah, so that's a problem of the energy in the digestive tract going backwards. And so things shouldn't be going up in your digestive tract. They should only be going down. So believe it or not, Ayurveda focuses more on things below your digestive tract and what's happening there because something is blocked and not allowing energy to move through. So you can measure your transit time, which is the time it takes food to go from your mouth out the other end. We would like that to be between 18 to 24 hours. So if it's in that neighborhood, that would be great. You could eat something like a meal of beets, and then when it comes out, measure that. If that's too slow, that can be a factor. So check that out. Make sure that the bowel movements are comfortable, frequent, lubricated, and have all the right characteristics. And then just in terms of medicine to treat the damage from the heat in the stomach, licorice is an excellent remedy. And I usually just use encapsulated licorice, just powdered licorice in a capsule. You can make tea out of it, but licorice is delicious. A pinch of licorice is delicious. A medicinal dose starts to get pretty overwhelming from the sweetness. So you could brew it and drink it in that way. Otherwise, just capsules, or just take the powder and stir it into a little bit of mushy food or something and swallow it. But that's a supreme remedy for treating heat in the tummy and allowing it to soothe the mucous membranes. And it's anti-inflammatory and slimy and soothing both at the same time, slimy in a good way. So those are some tips to get started.
Nice. Well, KP, I always enjoy our discussions immensely, and I will be taking your course, and I'm sure that many people are inspired to hear from you both in the intro call and in this question and answer session. I'm just curious, personally, what are you inspired about sharing in this course? What is it in this course that is giving you some inspiration to share?
I just see that people are hurting. I talk to so many people every day that are stressed, they can't sleep. I just read yesterday in some study that we've crossed the border for more Americans having daily anxiety than not. Even a generation ago, that didn't happen. So people are having physical problems due to that. I also see that we're on about the third or fourth generation of people eating a poor diet, eating devitalized food, food that doesn't have the proper nutrients, trying to live on donuts and coffee. And we finally just are kind of scraping bottom with that, and people just don't know where to turn. Even conventional medicine that suppresses symptoms isn't working the way that people expect it to anymore. And people are just kind of walking misery. I just see that every day as I talk to people, and I don't remember it being that way 30 or 40 years ago. So I'd like to bring these techniques to people in a way that they can actually really use them and go out tomorrow and get the benefits. They can understand the underlying reasons that we use to stay healthy, then great. But otherwise, any little bit helps. And just to keep moving forward toward health rather than sort of spiraling downward, which is what I see. The techniques are there. I mean, I've just seen some incredibly miraculous things in my career, and I know that we can do that. It's just a matter of tuning into the right information, getting committed, making it happen, and we'll get started with this course on Ayurvedic herbalism.
Nice. Well, I'd just like to say on behalf of everybody who is on this question and answer session, thank you for all of your excellent information, really good answers to comprehensive questions, and for everybody who sent in questions. Thank you so much for doing that. And KP, I also want to just say thank you to you personally for all the work that you have been doing for many years to help bring this classical knowledge and this very important medical tradition into our society at this particular time when we need it so much. So thank you for your good work also.
Well, back at you, David. I know that we both have sort of been on the vanguard of this new rejuvenation of natural healing in the United States, and it seems like it's really sort of taking off now. And if the positions were reversed, I'd be saying the same thing to you if you're on the other side of the camera. So thanks to you and the Shift Network for the opportunity to do this. And I just really appreciate all the work that I've been doing with the Shift Network, one of the most professional organizations I've ever worked with. And the people are all really nice. So they practice what they preach, they walk their talk. That's for sure. So I'd encourage people listening to, if you want to get involved with an organization that really delivers what they say they're going to, really help you, makes it workable for you, Shift Network has always been good to me. So thanks for attending, and we'll see you again sometime soon.
Nice. Okay, and just to remind everybody one last time, you can see all the details about the course at ayurvedicherbalism.com. ayurvedicherbalism.com. And again, this is starting Wednesday, June 6th. So thank you again to everybody for joining us for this very interesting educational session. I will be in the course, so hope to see you there. Thank you.